The turbulence came out of nowhere. It had started over New Mexico on my flight from Arizona back to Texas. Thankfully, I'd spent the last 2 weeks taking catechism classes to appease my new husband's mother. Correction, my soon-to-be ex-husband. Although I'm not sure that was the correct term, what does one call an ex-partner of an annulled marriage? The plane felt like it was dropping in altitude at random moments. I could hear the bags overhead shifting. I tightened my seatbelt and put my head between my knees. Panic was starting to get the upper hand. Why weren't the oxygen masks being deployed? Surely this was an emergency situation. I touched the rosary worn around my neck and said a quick prayer to St. Christopher for safe travels. Then I began to question whether Christopher was the patron saint for travelers, so I altered the prayer to include Saints Francis and Jude. For added good measure, I threw in Saints Peter, Paul, Nicholas, Patty, and Valentine, along with Mother Mary. The prayers were not working. One thing could be said about me. I was consistent in my attitude toward religions. I was as good of a Catholic as I had been a Baptist. My poor husband. I left him to deal with his mother's anger after we announced the end of our marriage. I should have waited to fly with him, but this seemed the easier way out. Of course, I hadn't considered having to haul my own luggage everywhere at the time. This was only my 3rd flight. The first was for my grandmother's memorial service. She had wanted her ashes spread on the Mason-Dixon line, which was a very difficult task to honor since she hadn't been cremated. As a compromise between my grandmother's wishes and my father's frame of mind, she was buried in the family plot at the cemetery outside of town, and her memorial service was held in Missouri. The second time had been just hours after becoming Mrs. Clint Torres. Who would have guessed my first words as a married woman would have been, "Torres? So you're Hispanic? Thought you were Asian." Clint, a.k.a. Sticks, a.k.a. hot FBI agent and doctor, kissed my forehead. "There's so much for you to learn. This is going to be fun." Leave it to Lainee Delaney to marry a man when she didn't even know his name. But that's how most events happened in my life. Long-term goals and I had never been friends. My life was lived one moment at a time. I never knew what would transpire next, which was probably why I had such high anxiety. I hated surprises.